I was told I was not able to present in pajama today, so I made an effort. I put a shirt on. I'm glad for the third time, the 3 years in a row, I can drive this identity and access management panel. Must be because I'm doing a good job. For those who don't know me, my name is Anthony Mornay, and I'm the managing director of IAM Experts. I guess you can say that identity access management is my baby. I've been in the space for approximately 20 years, but today it's not about me. We've got a great panel of vendors with us that are going to talk about the space of identity access management, the wide space, and obviously their solutions and what they bring to the market. So before we jump into that space, the difference compared to last year is we have a much broader, much wider representations of the space. Last year, we were focusing on what I would call access management and authentications, authorization services. This year, we are covering identity access governance, the control, internal controls, sometimes to satisfy the regulators, the privilege access management space, which is very specific in very high demand as well. And again, the access management space with authentication and authorization services. With me, I've got 4 vendors, 4 market leaders covering that space. From Sena Segura, a leader in the privilege access management space, Ilantis, who covers very well the identity access management and the 3 space that I mentioned. ForgeRock, a leader in the access management and developing very, very quickly in other areas as well. And last but not least, Entrust, that will cover their solution and cover very well the authentications, access management, authentication services. So to start with, let me introduce you to Marcus. Marcus is the CEO and co-founder of Sena Segura. I hope I pronounced the name of the company very well. I believe it's Brazilian. Marcus, over to you, please. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Renaissance. And it's really great to be here today in this nice expo. This is my first time to talk to Ireland, and I'm really happy to be here today. So it's very good when we have opportunity to talk in cybersecurity expos, since cybersecurity is becoming more and more relevant. So, and today I will talk about one of these topics that is very crucial for cybersecurity, and I'm going to talk about privileged access management. That's where we are working since 2012, developing privileged access projects around the world. So I'm going to share a little bit about our experience in this field and contribute with the other panelists to have a great discussion this morning. And well, the first thing I would like to share to you is why privileged credentials are so important. Before we go into the journey itself, so the first thing we see every day, we see a lot of new headlines, mention a lot of new cyber attacks. All these cyber attacks talk about data leakage, violations, and privilege abuses. And the reason why privileged credentials are so relevant is because in the middle of every attack, or most of them, you have the participation of a privileged credential. Privileged credentials are the keys to the high value data. So almost all attacks, they are present in our key component in the process. And to understand this a little deeper, we can look to anatomy of cyber attack. And basically today, when you look to a cyber attack anatomy, you have 4 major steps. And the first one is, first you need to have a common credential. It's not a privileged credential, but it's a common credential that help you to get inside the perimeter. And since you step 2, you can have access to inside the perimeter. This common credential does not give you highest valuable data access, so you need to escalate the privilege. That's where privileged credentials comes in, and you have to worry about. So After I get inside the perimeter, I need to escalate my privilege. And after that, I can have access to the most available data, most available servers, and then I can run a kind of data encryption or extra filtration, depending on the kind of attack. So my key point here is that privileged credentials are essential in most of the main cyber attacks we see today in the headlines. And now, moving on, we understand that we have two different types of privileged credentials. When it comes, and you can see two different spaces. You have a space from humans, where you're talking about, when you talk about privileged credentials, we are looking to local administrative accounts, to domain admin accounts, privileged users, third-party access accounts. And when you look to machines and applications, you can see services accounts, applications account, DevOps credential, and DevOps circuit management. And between these two words, you have to deploy a lot of features of privileged access to secure all these privileged credentials and have the best practices working. So moving on, when we talk about PAM, what is PAM really about? It's about preventing privileged hacking or avoiding data leakage and being compliant with the industry and other national regulations like GDPR, PCI DSS, SOX, NIST, and IPA, and much others around the world that are becoming really, really core of the business. But when we decide to implement privileged access management, we have done this a lot since 2012. We have learned a lot about it and how difficult and how this process works. And I'm going to share this journey from the beginning when you decide to have PAM to the end of this process, trying to share most of our experience in this process. So when it comes to the PAM journey, I think the first step you need to address is to understand that it's very important to define your business drivers. So what are your motivations? What are your business drivers to deploy a PAM control inside your infrastructure? And here you can take, so sometimes we have clients and customers that wants to just address GDPR controls or NIST controls, or sometimes we have customers that have just got through a cyber attack and they need to recover all the infrastructure like a ransomware attacker. So it's very important you define the business drivers. Why are you doing that? Because based on that, you can understand the motivations of your privileged access management, and then you can define the proper and right implementation strategy. And it's very important to, when we talk about privileged access management, you have two key elements that need to be considered. The first is that PAM solutions need a higher level of integration with all other systems. So we are talking about delivering a lot of integrations, so it needs to be planned because you have a lot of integrations. And also, you need to take care with the frictions of the users, mostly because most of the times you are removing privilege from users and you have a psychological effect on the users. So when it comes to PAM, it's very important to take care of the number of integrations and the friction with the users, since you're going to remove some privilege of them. So it's very important to be clear your implementation instructions, find the friction, the last friction, way to deploy it, and then move ahead slowly with communication. And that brings us to the third step of this journey. And the first step is you need to engage your team from the beginning. So the most successful implementation we have done until today is depend on the fact that you engage your team from the beginning. So it's very important to make clear what are the business drive, what are the motivations, and what are the steps, and share and communicate with other other members of the team. Why are you doing that, and what is going to change, and why it is important for the company, right? And a fourth point is very important to identify team frictions and manage it. So many times, very common to find persons that are not available to help and support the process. So it's very important to identify these members and treat it directly and clear to reduce the friction of the process and avoid the project to be not successful. Then, after you have defined your strategy, you have the drivers, the strategy, engage the team, reduce the friction, you can choose the best PAM vendor in your portfolio and the best partner to help you to achieve these goals. And you can find a lot of different vendors, but it's very important to choose the PAM solution that addresses most of your needs, looking not only for the present, but the future also, right? And choose the right partner to support you during this process, because you're going to have a lot of frictions in this process, right? Since you have done all these 5 steps, it's time to move ahead. And we can go directly into the implementation process step by step. So right now you have the business driver, you have the team engaged, it's time to put in practice. And the first step to put in practice is define a clear policy. So privileged access management is much about defining a good privilege policy. Define it, make it clear, share with your team the privilege, and especially look to the least privilege process to guarantee that each one of the person will have the right and proper privilege to do his work, but not more than that, right? So it's a key component. After that, it's very important that you understand that you need to control the privileged credential. So when you deploy plan, you need to gather credentials that are available in all your infrastructure, bring it to the vault, bring it to your PAM solutions. You can use tools like Discovery to find these credentials, bring it inside your system. But it's very important to plan this process of bringing in the credentials, right? So after that, you have the least privileged policies, all your credentials, you bring it inside your vault. Then you start isolated sessions. That means you're going to remove access to these credentials you have just imported inside your vault to give to the end users isolate sessions. And it's very important because when you give him isolate sessions, you isolated the end server like your Windows or Linux server from his desktop, his main workstation, and it avoids a lot of troubles like ransomwares and other kind of attacks. And after that, you have all the sessions isolated. You need to move ahead. And then after you have gained a little bit maturity, and you can start to integrate applications and services. And when it comes to applications and services, the thing's a little bit more complicated than just bringing the credentials in isolated sessions, because you need to take care how these applications and services will behave after the integration. So it's not something rocket science, but it's very, very relevant that you take care of the process, take care of this integrations to guarantee that you won't have any kind of problem with applications. And then after you have started talking about the integrated with applications, you can go to secure DevOps and secret management. That's really a new trend in the market. It's very important. When you buy a PAM, choose a PAM solution, you need to look for credentials management and look to secret management in the future. And at least when you go to the last step, you need to gain confidence in this process and repeat it continually until you achieve maturity and create a PAM culture. So what is important here is that to develop a PAM solution, it's very important to do step by step, gain confidence, and continuously improve the process until it becomes a culture, until it becomes really, really mature process. So it takes time to do it slowly, one step by time, right? Man, with this, I finish. And as it's my first time talk to Ireland, I would like to introduce a little bit Segura with a few slides talking about us. And the first thing I'd like to share about is we have been working in this field since 2012, and right now we are named challenge in the Gartner Magic Quadrants. And the reason we are challenged because we still need to grow our customers base outside around the world. That's why we are not leaders today. and it can be very clear when you compare technologies. We have, I will share you the next slide. And also you can find we have SenSegura available in more than 40 countries around the world. If you need more information, you can go to the website and see a little bit about more this information. And when you look just at technology, you can see we have a very good position in the critical capabilities. There's a Gartner specific report about technology, and we come ahead other vendors are in the leadership. So it's very, you can go to our website, get the full report, understand that. And one last thing I would like to before finish is that we have delivery options for most of the delivery formats available in the market. So we can deliver since you were in private cloud, Citrix in server, Microsoft Hyper-V. We can deliver it in public cloud like Azure, AWS, Google Cloud. Also for specific situations for government and other situations, we can deploy in hardenized appliance. And soon in 2021, we'll have the SaaS version available. So we can deliver it in almost any format available in the market. And one point I would like to share with you is that we have the highest recommendation rate in the Gartner Fusion site is 97%, and you can check in the Gartner website. Coming to our differentials, I would like to before I finish, I would like to just point here. When you look at SenSegura, we offer a completely turnkey solution. So in one single virtual machine, you have all the components you need to have all the security safe and to deploy it very fast. What brings to the next point. We can deliver all these PAM solutions and deploy it very fast. Usually 1 day to install and deploy. It's really fast because of this turnkey architecture. And one of the things we really is about our strategy is to make it easy to adopt, because we see today that most of the users of PAM solution use the base of the solution. And so creating easy to adopt makes this very, create a lot of less friction for users and make it easy to adopt, to learn, and reduce the maturity curve, which brings more security for the end users. And looking to the future, that's what we spend most of our time. What is going to happen next? So we create a very modular platform that allows that give our customers opportunities to look to understand that when they buy SenSegura, they have opportunity to have new models in the future to adapt the futures. And one thing I would like to share that we are a unique PAM vendor in the market with complete set of tools based on a PAM endpoint, DevOps, strict management, and certificate management, completely integrated in one single platform, all in one, fully integrated in the same interface, which makes it much easier to address. And so with this, I'm coming to my final slides, and to put in here the key takeaways I would like you to come to get from my presentation. And the first one is I would like you to be in mind that PAM is really crucial. That's why Gartner has pointed in 2018, 2019 as a key and the key cybersecurity project, right? If you're going to choose a complete PAM solution, try to find one that is completely and simple to deploy, which will make your life much easier. Because as I said, PAM is completely about dealing with users that are losing privilege with a lot of integration. So choose a simple platform to make it easier to deploy, to reduce the amount of work you have to do to deploy, and have a clear implementation strategy. So it's very important you clear about the steps you're going to do, and for doing that, it's very important you find the right partner with experience and support to help you and your team to go through the main challenge of this process. And to conclude and finish my presentation, I would like to reinforce that we are 8 years available in the market of PAM. We have 20 years in this technology field. And we are very proud and happy to be in Ireland, starting to deploy CNC Group in Ireland. And you can count on us to share our experience from 8 years, uh, just deploying PAN for small, medium, big companies around the world. So thank you for your time. I hope to be uh, to you enjoy the session. Then I will be very pleasure to take questions if it's when it's the moment.
Thank you very much, Marcus. That was great. I could very much relate to what you were saying in terms of the approach, especially what you're saying the adoptions and changing people habits, introducing privileged access management. I've got plenty of questions for you, but I'll keep them until the end. I'll be patient. In the meantime, just for everybody, please be aware, you can raise questions. You can't talk, unfortunately. We muted all of you today. Despite my big headset, I can't hear you. But you can raise questions on the chat. What I'll do is I'll keep those questions for the end. Once everybody has done their presentations, we can have a review of all the questions and make sure that they get the great answers. So thank you, Marcus. I've got my questions on my side and I'll keep them for the end. So moving on to Binod with Islantis. Binod, thank you very much for joining. Binod is the chairman of Islantis. And I believe today Binod will introduce us his solutions and very much focused on one single fabric. I don't want to steal your thunder, but just a great presentations and the simplifications in the IAM space. Binod, over to you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody to this session. I look forward to having an interesting and productive discussion for you. I chose a topic which is not going to begin with our product presentation or anything. It is an issue, one of the major issues that the industry, including the customers, the vendors themselves to some extent, and the analysts have been struggling with for quite some time. Identity and access management is something that has been always taken to be a fairly complex technology, and the complexity has only increased over the years, making at least the identity governance and administration something which people think twice or thrice before implementing. Not only is complicated, but it also makes it, it's become very, very difficult to implement. So the cost factor also is very high. Before I begin, just one small correction. I'm not the CEO as written here. As I was introduced, I'm the chairman now. We recently had a new CEO joining out in US, who happens to be also, who was the cybersecurity lead partner for the US for Ernst & Young. And with that, I look after more of building the market and also participating in conversations of this kind. So let me get into talking about why, about identity and access management being complex. First thing that comes to my mind is what made IAM complex. I think it's important for all of us to understand a little bit of the past in order to understand the present and the future. And from that point of view, some of us, I've been in this domain for more than 20 years now, and I'm sure many of you listening to this conversation have been there for long enough to know some of the background to it. So let me spend a couple of minutes on that part first. Stage one of identity and access management, which began sometime in the year 2003, was that of mergers and acquisitions. At that point in time, there were small entrepreneurial vendors who would come out with provisioning or a little bit of single sign-on kind of solutions, and a bit of some other small technologies were beginning to emerge. The large companies began acquiring these small vendors, and they, like the large guys do, they like to always sell in the larger numbers as a full suite of products, getting them more revenue. They began creating suite of products for a complete solution. The problem was that these solutions were different technologies, different interfaces, and different philosophies. Be it IBM or Oracle or CA or anybody else, perhaps with the only exception in Novell in those days, who had its own solution. Everybody else went and bought from different stables, thereby making it very difficult for them to come together as one single technology. The consequence of that was that the implementation and support was endless and expensive. And that led to what we saw for many, many years, and we still see to some extent today. Identity and access management is for the chosen few. Stage 2, that began sometime about 7, 8, or maybe about 10 years ago. The specialized camps. Now, another set of vendors came. The technologies were becoming more significantly deeper than what they were in the beginning. And with that, we had access management turning out as a camp. So we had the Oktas of the world coming in 2012 when they brought in the cloud-based access management, and that became a completely separate and fairly intricate domain by itself. Identity administration, identity governance, as you may be very much aware, identity governance came in from vendors like a couple of vendors came in, including SailPoint, and they used to do only identity governance initially. They had nothing to do with identity administration. It was only after 4 to 5 years of their being in existence, they became an identity administration players also. So all these became specialized camps. So did privileged access management, and even till today, most of it is. So that was stage 2. And it was getting more and more entrenched over time in terms of the complexity because of the separation from each other. So looking at all that, reflecting of a disjointed and fragmented past that identity and access management has, let's look at the state of the IBM universe today. So if you look at the technologies, you've got the older and multiple product companies, the IBMs, CA, Oracle, Microsoft. Then on the other side, you've got the middle-aged companies. I would call them middle-aged because they've been almost there for about 8 to 9 years now. Okta, Identity IQ on the IGA side from another company, then OneLogin, Omada, and so on and so forth. What's common amongst all of them is that they specialize in one of the camps. And that's what they do.
Binod, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I believe you are not sharing, or right now you're sharing your screen. Sorry, I don't know if we were able to see your presentation before that. I think it's coming up right now. Apologize, please carry on.
Okay. So, and then there are the younger companies. Idaptive, of course, it came and went. It got acquired recently. Identity Now was launched by SailPoint, which is more of a cloud-based identity governance and administration one. Savient, again, identity governance and administration. And still, all these different products and vendors that are there, whether they're old or middle-aged or the younger generation, they all still seem to be practicing the same old technique of having specialization in one area. Those who have got multiple, who have got all the technologies, have got multiple products that came mostly from different camps. We begin to see a little bit of integration happening. If you look at Okta, for example, Okta now also has a little bit of identity administration over the last few years, but no governance and no depth in administration. And the product largely is an access management product. So the focus continues on mergers and acquisitions, super specialization, and vying for leadership positions that way. What therefore is needed to simplify the whole area is what I would call the MS Office approach to the identity and access management. In effect, a convergence is what is really required. That would lead to delivering with ultimate simplicity, which does not exist in identity and access management at all. The interesting part is that about 3.5 years ago, we had some close to about 11 sessions with Gartner. And at that point in time, we were looking to develop the latest range of the latest breed of an identity and access management product. We had always been, we had been a services company for initial 12 years of our life, from 2000 to 2012. We were one of the top vendors noted as by Gartner in the services side. We knew every single technology. And then we went into becoming a product company in 2013, when our first product, which was in the access management space, though very profound and very good product for the enterprise, large enterprise customers, it missed the mark because the customers who went into cloud for access management in the beginning were very much smaller customers. They were not enterprise guys. So, and that's how Oktas of the world became quite popular. So when we went to Gartner for our 3rd generation product roadmap, they said it's got to be a comprehensive solution. It must be very flexible. You should be able to implement features and modules at will. Very importantly, it should be delivered very, very easily, not the way the products are delivered today, especially in the IGA and other spaces. And it must have very, very low total cost of ownership, which includes all these 3 elements. It should also be future-proof. And I'll talk a little about the identity fabric as I go forward, but that was the ask from Gartner for a futuristic product. And that's that's what led us to develop Compact Identity as a brand new product, which was launched about 1.5 years ago. And the whole product and the company has not looked back ever since. The product Compact Identity is something which is a combination of and a fairly deep dive technologies of access management, identity governance, identity administration. We recently added privilege access management. And if somebody already has something like privilege access management, it seamlessly integrates into that. So Compact Identity is the only product in the industry today that delivers very deep identity and access management, including all the 4 pillars that we have today in the IAM space. Let me talk a little about the identity fabric, which we all are beginning to hear a lot about. And this is going to be a game changer. And anybody who does not deliver this for the future will end up having customers who will not be future-proof. So what is identity fabric? Essentially, if you look at the current way identity and access management is implemented, all customers, they look at a bunch of requirements based on their business analysis, and then they set some specifications. They set up a roadmap of these are the 20 things I'm going to do, and then they take on a product and they begin implementing it in phases. That's the way it works today. The requirement of today's business world has changed dramatically. What happens there? Let me give you an example. A department procured an IoT device. The IoT device was given to somebody to manage. The guy went on to have a session with the security guys and the business guys to understand their needs and requirements. The security guys say that this product does not have sufficient security from an access management perspective, and you do need to have a 2-factor authentication and a couple of other things tied to it. Now, that becomes a requirement of a service from the business manager of that IoT device, and he cannot go to the identity and access management group to ask for that facilitation. They will say that for the next 1.5 years, we already have got a very firm roadmap for our implementation, and we cannot entertain you. So the identity fabric is a game changer in that if you implement that, anybody from the organization can request for a service. Like in this case, the gentleman who has got the IoT device management responsibility, he will request for the services of a higher level of authentication, authorization to be tied to the access of his technology. And he would be on the fly given permission and facilitation to make that happen. So it is a very online kind of an IAM services as opposed to very static kind of IAM services. And the product of Atlantis, which is Compact Identity, is one of the first products which is very much suited to do that. The requirement, if you look at the analyst reports, they say the requirement for Identity Fabric is that you should have minimum number of products. And I just talked about how Compact Identity fulfills that criteria. It should have very strong API management, because when you're bringing in and you're bringing in so many different kinds of services from so many of your internal businesses, then to be able to combine with different products and services, you need to have a very robust API management. Your product also needs to be highly risk aware, both to take care of the internal and external signals. And if you look at some point, something like Compact Identity, you will see how powerful is the analytics features and the risk engine that we are developing based on that, which is going to be out soon, combines all the signals coming in both from the access management side, governance, and the administration side, because it's all inside one single product. And of course, there's a lot being talked about the risk exchange, orchestrating the risk information. As I said, again, Compact Identity fits in very well because from ground up, it has been developed to take care of that. Let me just give you, as a final thing, an example of the identity fabric in the access management space. So access management as an island today does not make sense. You have so many things tied to it. You may need risk data, you may need dynamic multi-factor authentication, you may need automatic access approval, so on and so forth. And all these can be treated as different services that should be available to the various stakeholders in the organization to request and consume at their will. And so this is what an access management on the identity fabric looks like. So Compact Identity, the last slide, makes it very simple. It has 20 plus years of global IAM implementation experience. Needless to say, we are Kapinger Cole put us in the magic, in the leadership compass for both innovation as well as product categories, both for identity and governance and administration, as well as access management. By the way, this is the only product from a company which went for being evaluated both under access management and IGA categories and won the leadership positions in both of them. We could not file for the IGA for Gartner last year, and we were looking forward to it this year, but unfortunately, Gartner has taken away the magic quadrant for IGA. But if you look at the Gartner recommendations, Atlantis is one of the very highly recommended products from them as well today. So just to sum it up, Compact Identity is all-in-one, modular and incremental implementation product. Implementations can be done in, one with 5x kind of rapidity as compared to any other technology. It's got a new way of building application connectors, because that has been one of the biggest issues in the industry of IGA all this while. It's got risk engine coming in very soon. We've got almost all the global key partners very much selling and implementing our solution worldwide. We got local expertise with a fabulous set of partners that we have in different parts of the world. A very flexible product with license available both as perpetual, which could be in on-premise, cloud, multi-tenanted, or private cloud if somebody wants it that way. and also beginning to be available in a as a service model through the managed service providers. So in effect, in nutshell, compact identity makes things exceedingly simple. Thank you so much for your listening, and I'll be happy to take questions when we go into that phase.
Thank you very much, Binod. That was great. Thank you for these presentations. And again, we can really relate on our side. We see a growing demand for, I guess, linked to the regulations, where especially things like GDPR and the data privacy regulations, where new industries which were not heavily regulated are now starting to look at identity access management and are indeed saying, well, since I'm looking at that space and looking at that space overall, why not using one single technology? So definitely makes sense. And again, I've got a couple of questions for you at the end. I'll keep them. I'll be patient. Thank you very much. For everybody else, again, feel free, ask your questions, don't wait for the end. I'll keep them on my side. So any questions, you can put them in the chat, and then we will bring that up in the QA panel at the end. For now, Binod, thank you very much. I'll transition to ForgeRock, and let me introduce you to Matt. Matt, who is a senior director and product management at ForgeRock, and Matt is going to talk about the great solutions and the approach, especially with the, we can't call it emergence anymore. I think the presence and the growing presence of the hybrid and cloud solutions and how we deal with that. So Matt, over to you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Anthony, and it's great to be here, everybody. And so today what I'm going to talk to you guys about is how to secure your hybrid cloud. And so we know everybody's going that way. And if you just look out at the IT industry today, you know, the word of the day, the word of the industry, or even the year really is hybrid. With a few exceptions of some brand new companies that were born in the cloud, think companies like Uber, maybe. All the organizations out there today are looking for or have a hybrid solution when it comes to their IT infrastructure, right? So today, what we're going to take a look at here, what I want to discuss with you is what's driving these hybrid cloud deployments, what security issues are caused by them, and how a modern identity and access management system can help overcome those. And then lastly, we're going to talk about what does it take to transition from a on-prem solution to a cloud solution, and then talk about a customer use case. So, you know, if you look out there and you talk to people, there's this myth in the industry that everybody's going to have everything in the cloud in the next 2 to 3 years. And I feel like there's a lot of people in the IT space that feel this pressure to move things to the cloud as quickly as possible. However, we just had an Identity Live event 2 months ago, and 86% of our respondents said that they really feel they're going to have a hybrid deployment for the next 5 years or longer. And this lines up exactly with a poll done by Flexera that said 87% of organizations are going to have a hybrid deployment for the next 5 years or longer. So what that really means is that organizations do want to adopt the cloud, but there's things that are stopping them, whether those are, you know, regulations or whether that's just the technology isn't available. They have issues that are stopping them from getting 100% to the cloud. They've recognized this, but they also are seeing some of the issues that come along with a hybrid deployment. You know, one is it really extends your security barrier from, you know, possibly legacy mainframes on-prem all the way out to the cutting edge SaaS technology. And the second thing is it starts to create identity silos, and those identity silos need to be managed. They prevent, you know, what they do is they provide security areas where people can infiltrate. They provide bad user experiences because you have, you know, different usernames and passwords that have to be typed in at different places, and it just creates more hassle. So when we think about hybrid, organizations out there, they are pushing to adopt SaaS wherever possible. They're trying to do this because they really want to be able to deliver new functionality to both their employees and their customers as quickly as possible. And so when we think about SaaS, what do people think about? They think about time to value. They think about reduced operating costs, things along those lines. And that's why organizations are looking at, wherever possible, they want to deliver a SaaS a SaaS solution or leverage that. You take 2020 and you see what COVID has done and the rapid shift from in-person interaction, whether that's remote working, whether that's commerce, whether that's banking, what have you. This rapid shift from in-person to online has only added rocket fuel to that digital transformation. And this was summed up by Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella in one of their earnings calls, where she said, we've seen 2 years of digital transformation in the past 2 months. So organizations that had a plan to get more to the cloud or to add more of that digital capability had to really accelerate that to meet the needs of the enterprise due to the COVID pandemic. And so when you look at how do we get this hybrid and what's so special about hybrid? Well, hybrid allows organizations to benefit from SaaS applications by innovating faster and providing new capabilities while limiting their risks of having to move some of their key infrastructure to the cloud at once. So if you think about an organization's core competency or application or all their intelligence or their data, that's probably still sitting on-prem. And the shift to move that to a cloud is probably a lot more complicated than it is to just add new services. So embracing a hybrid approach allows an organization to be quick and nimble while limiting their risk with any migration steps. So if you think about why organizations are going on a SaaS model, you would think the same thing is true for identity and access management. They would want to go to the cloud in the same way. And so that's true. And it's always been true. And as Benoit pointed out, we have a few different phases here of what identity management has been through over the past 20 years. I've been around to see a lot of them. And he talked about, in 2012, the cloud identity and access management providers came out. And the thing is that at that time, most of the cloud identity access management providers really focused on solving only the cloud problem. And if you wanted to solve all of your problem, being your on-prem and your cloud applications, you were still dealing with those legacy on-prem applications that he discussed were hard to deploy, hard to manage, and hard to configure. And that also made it very difficult for people to add new services, as he highlighted with his Internet of Things example. So that's all been true, but recently we've seen a shift in the cloud identity and access management providers out there where they're able to handle both your cloud identity management solutions as well as your on-prem identity management solutions. So if you think about it, now we're talking about hybrid and we have this security landscape. So now security is more important than it's ever been before with the COVID situation as well. So if you talk about Verizon put out a stat in 2019 that 67% of security breaches were due to credential theft. And that's really interesting to think about because that really goes to the heart of identity and access management. And what's one of the biggest ways to steal somebody's credential? Well, that's with phishing attacks, right? So since COVID started, there's been a 350% increase in phishing attacks. Now this came from Google and this came back in July. And what they said was that people were 3 times likely to click on a link that mentioned something about COVID and enter their information. I don't have a stat now, but in the past 2 weeks, we've talked a lot about vaccines. I'm sure there's a lot of phishing sites out there talking about vaccines that are out there to get people's credentials. And then lastly, what we also found out from Malwarebytes back in August is that 20% of organizations have had some kind of security breach due to remote work from COVID. So this cloud-based identity and access management solution is not only something that's needed for enterprises, but it's also needed for your CIAM customers as well, because you want to be able to provide great experiences for them. But with that as a backdrop, why security is important. So why do people want to move to the cloud? Well, first thing is that they want to increase their security. So if I say, you know, security breaches are due to security thefts and there's phishing out there, well, the first thing you want to do is you want to add the most advanced authentication capabilities out there. So whether that's, you know, invisible second factor of authentication like geolocation or known device or things along those lines, or if you want to add like a FIDO2 or WebAuthn type of authentication, which, you know, can't be phished, it's no man in the middle. Those are things that are driving people to adopt new identity and access management solutions. The second thing is they want to reduce risk. So they want to be able to have a centralized security policy to manage all their applications, you know, get rid of those identity silos so you don't have what I call swivel chair administration, where you have to set security policies and user access provisions per each application. So you get rid of that. Another reason for people wanting to go to a cloud-based identity and access management solution is to reduce costs. You know, and this infrastructure that's going to be run by a cloud provider, a software as a service, not only does it reduce costs, and, you know, there's organizations out there that'll say, you know, you can save about 80% of that maintenance cost by leveraging a cloud solution, but you're also going to leverage the security team of that SaaS provider, because that security team is going to be delivering patches and upgrades, not only to the identity and access management solution, but to the underlying infrastructure that it's running on as well. So, you know, you have that security, you have that security patching, you have the monitoring going on. So you're reducing costs. Not only do you not have to have, you just don't have to have a team to worry about it. You just consume the service. And then lastly, you know, you really need a modern identity and access management solution, and one from the cloud, because you want to increase your speed to value. So if you think about the whole digital transformation and why we're going into hybrid is to deliver new applications and new capabilities quickly to our employees and our customers, there's no reason to go to the cloud and try to do this quickly if you cannot enable or secure those applications just as quickly. So those legacy on-prem solutions that were talked about in the previous session, where, you know, it was an amalgamation of a bunch of different technologies that were bought and put together, they just don't have the capability to quickly enable new applications. They generally don't have all the newest authentication capabilities, and they don't have all the newest standards for connecting to different applications. So when we stop and think about it, so, you know, we want to talk about how does ForgeRock enable your hybrid cloud? And there's a lot of things that we do that make it much easier for people to migrate to the hybrid deployment. So the first thing that we look at here is that what ForgeRock has done is we have an all-encompassing identity and access management suite, and we leverage the same architecture from on-prem as in the cloud. And so what that means is that if you have a solution and you know that migrating an identity and access management solution isn't something you're going to do overnight, it's a process, you can leverage all the same policies, all the same UI, all the same capabilities from your on-prem to your cloud. It makes it very, very, very easy and mitigates a lot of your risk. Another thing that we have there that helps mitigate your risk is that we have a very comprehensive solution that can handle both your on-premise as well as your cloud infrastructure. Another thing about our solution is very configurable. And so what that means is that unlike a lot of other cloud solutions, and this is true across all types of SaaS applications where they do things and they do things very well, but they do things in their way. Our solution is able to be customized and configured in a way that's going to meet your current business processes, as well as where you're going to go in the future as more applications migrate to the cloud. So it reduces that risk of having to change a business process, as well as putting together a new security solution. Once again, we have the complete identity and access management platform for single sign-on, authentication, provisioning, rights management, relationship capabilities. So we have the whole solution available to our customers in the cloud. It's not simply an access management solution. And then on the pricing side, we offer what we call predictable pricing. So we're not out there charging on active users, so you don't have a huge surge that you have to deal with. There's a lot of organizations that had signed up for SaaS contracts prior to COVID, and when things switched to being all online, they got hit with these huge surge prices because they just didn't prepare and they weren't expecting to have, go from 65% in-person banking transactions to 95% online. They just didn't budget for that. And along with that pricing is our licensing allows you to have deployment flexibility in that whatever you license to have in the cloud, you can also run on-prem at no additional charge, which is going to help you with that migration. And lastly, I want to talk about security. And when people think about the cloud and they think about identity management in the cloud, one of the things they worry about is the security of those credentials, the security of the PII that's up there. And so that's a really good point for people to think about. And with ForgeRock, what we do is that we make sure that each organization has their own isolated tenant. And what that really means is that you're the only organization that's going to be leveraging that set of VMs to run your solution. There's no backdoor that can be infiltrated. And the other thing about that is that it really eliminates this complaint about what's called noisy neighbors, where you have an organization that's running a huge batch job or is running at high volume, actually slowing you down. So that's one of the great things about our solution is it gives you full tenant isolation. This also allows you to do backup and restores whenever you need to, which is also problematic with other SaaS solutions. Your data, you can control where you want your data to be. We have data centers all around the world that you pick where you want it, and that data isn't going anywhere else. And that's one of those great things with that tied with the tenant isolation. There's no commingling of your data either. So all your data is in one place. It's all there for you. And there's no one that can accidentally or intentionally go view that PII or your customer data. And then lastly, as I talked about before, we have security teams that are patching and maintaining and monitoring all the infrastructure for that solution. So you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to have a team doing that. We take care of that for you 100%. So those are some of the reasons why you want to go to the cloud. So why don't we take a look at a migration process? I think a lot of people feel that this could be something that's very difficult. They're worried about doing a rip and replace and how to maintain business continuity. But really, it's a pretty seamless process here. So if we look at, here's an existing on-premise identity and access management solution. You have your data store and you send your information to the identity management system. And then the identity management system is processing all the authorizations, the authentications, and it has the connections to all the applications that you want to authenticate to. And so this is your current on-prem, this is how it's working. So now you want to go to the cloud. So the first step here is you want to set up your ForgeRock Identity Cloud system. And the next thing you want to do is you want to send all your authentication capabilities up to the cloud. So you want to have your authentication capabilities, your roles, your rules, all the decision making happen in the cloud. And then you'll sync that with what was on premise and still leverage those application connections to actually grant the access to the applications from that on-premise engine. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to shift the authentication without worrying about breaking the linkage in the background. The other thing that happens there is that now you can add new security capabilities. So we talk about, as we talked about before, it's really important to be able to leverage those new authentication capabilities in the marketplace, being able to provide more seamless experiences, whether it's just having a better password reset solution, or in the CIAM world, having a better self-service registration so that users are able to sign up to your service and enroll and become new customers, and have that be as seamless and easy as possible by leveraging, social identity registration and then followed up by progressive profiling to make sure you get users on board easily. So now you can do that, but you don't have to worry about whether users can get access to the applications because they're still being run by your on-prem system. You're just delivering that more secure and better user experience through the cloud modern identity and access management solution. Once you have that in place, then you want to start looking at your application migration, right? So you want to leverage all the new and existing protocols, like maybe it's OAuth 2 or OpenID Connect, and there's a new one coming out that we support now called Macaroons that allows you to easily integrate with these SaaS applications, your mobile applications, and then you even can use the same technology through edge controllers to integrate with your on-premise applications. So you really want to go through these. You want to do these one by one. You want to make sure you take your time here, just because, if you aren't able to connect to those applications, that's either going to provide a really bad user experience where they don't have access to what they're trying to do as a customer, or your employees are going to have a lot of downtime. So once again, here you use the modern technologies to connect to your SaaS and your mobile applications. You leverage an edge controller, we call it ours an identity gateway, to be able to connect to your legacy on-premise applications. And now you have everything connected to your identity and access management solution in the cloud. You can retire your on-prem solution. You don't have to maintain it, patch it, update it, anything along those lines. And you can leverage the edge to continue to support your legacy applications while you transition and move them to the cloud. And as you do that, once you move them to the cloud, they're going to be able to leverage the new technologies and standards and formats that I mentioned before, and just easily integrate to that cloud identity and access management solution. So that's what we look at as a hybrid migration, how you get from a legacy system to a cloud system very easily. It's not complicated. And once again, you're able to get that quick win of having a better user experience or a more secure user experience as soon as you turn on that cloud and have it become the authorization and authentication engine. So let's look at a customer example. One of our customers, Calabrio, they're a call center technology company, and what they really prided themselves on and what really drove their business was providing the best customer experience possible. And because of their success, they actually had, a bunch of acquisitions that really gave them multiple identity silos across all the different services that they were delivering. So a company that prides themselves on this great customer experience had a lot of growth from it, but what they find themselves with is customers with very disjointed experiences because they have to authenticate to multiple different applications with these identity silos. So what they did was they decided they were going to try to solve that themselves. They spent some time trying to get these identities together and synchronize username and passwords and things like that. But after a while, they just realized it wasn't something that they were going to be able to do. So what they needed was one solution, one integration, and one configuration that could support both their cloud solution as well as their on-premise solution. They had customers that wanted to leverage their SaaS application, and they have customers that, as we discussed earlier, aren't allowed to put that kind of data in the cloud and must run everything on-prem. So what they did was they worked with us, and we were able to deliver an enterprise solution that could centralize all of their authentication and identity silos into one, deliver that to them very easily with the ease and the speed of a cloud solution, and that they could integrate once and provide that seamless experience for their customers. So we delivered that solution across all their service platforms very quickly for them. So now they're able to take all of their solutions and have one username and password or one identity and be able to get in. And I do believe that they're going on to provide stronger authentication down the line as well. So that's just showing how, in today's age where you have this digital transformation and this quick growth, it can cause these problems of identity silos and how they can be quickly rectified and solved through a modern identity and access management system that's capable of being delivered from the cloud. So before I go, there's some key points I wanted you to take away from the discussion. As you leverage, as you look at what you want to do in the cloud, the first thing is, leverage that hybrid flexibility, right? Embrace hybrid. There's good reasons to have that. So when you're looking at an identity and access management solution, make sure that that solution has strong support for your legacy applications. You don't want to be forced to move your legacy applications quicker or have to have a separate identity and access management solution for those, because that really negates the reason why you want to have an all-encompassing IDM. You also want to look at an organization or a product that is able to work both on-premise and in the cloud, because you're going to be able to leverage that single security policy, that common architecture across both with the same kinds of commands, and that's going to mitigate your risk. So if you're using the same solution on both on-premise and in the cloud, you can mitigate your risk as you go from one to the other. The other thing is make sure you leverage your cloud security, right? So you want to have that full tenant isolation. You want to have a monitored environment. And then the other thing is that, we have dedicated security teams that are constantly applying the real-time security patches. So make your cloud identity and access management provider part of your security team, make them a security partner in your quest for certifications and things like that. And then the other thing is make sure you're deploying the latest technology. One of the great things about having a cloud solution is that as we put out new capabilities, there's no installation required on your part. They just automatically appear, and then you're able to adapt them. So make sure you're consuming that from the cloud so you can get the latest authentication methods, the access protocols, and really, when we think about how do we provide the most secure yet the best experience for our end users, that's all to do with context. And what our solution is really good at is providing context in every step of the way of a user journey. And so you want to make sure that you're able to get the latest contextual clues into your solution as quickly as possible. So, just to wrap up and last thing I want to make here is that as you're out there looking at your identity and access management solutions, leverage the cloud, leverage a solution in the cloud that can support your hybrid environment, because you're going to be in hybrid for the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. So it's really important that your solution can do that. And if you do, you can take your investment and focus your money, your development money and your IT money on things that are your core competencies that bring your business revenue, and let the identity and access management solution fall to us. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and I will be more than happy to answer questions later on in the program.
Matt, thank you very much. That was great. And yes, I do also have a lot of questions for you, but I'll wait for the end. Thank you very much. Indeed, we do see the emergence of some organizations these days which are full cloud, not even hybrid, but that remains very much an exception. And as you say, the hybrid model will prevail and will keep ongoing for the next couple of years easily. So thank you very much. We'll take on board the questions. Keep asking your questions on the chat. I'll keep them on in the QA panel. We've got about 15-20 questions already. I'll move on to our last speaker, Rajan from Entrust, who is a product manager and is going to talk about Zero Trust. Rajan, thank you for joining us. Welcome, and please, over to you.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Rajan Barara. I'm Director of Product Management at Entrust for Identity. So good speakers, good bunch of discussions so far. Everybody has been talking about how the times have been changing. People talked about COVID, but even before COVID, we had a lot of accelerated digital transformation, whether it was cloud now. Cloud services have been around for since 2005, 6 onwards, but actually cloud services, if you think about it, not software as a services, cloud has been around since 1990s. It was in form of your carrier providing you telephony services at home. That's a software as a service, providing you capability to talk to other people from a central location. Cloud is an evolution of those kinds of things. And 5G is coming up. Mobility has increased from phones perspective since iPhone came out in 2007 or so. Workstations, your capability to take your laptops home has increased. And then all that was happening and COVID hit us. Unfortunately, COVID hit us, but that sped up the digital transformation for by about 6 years. Video conferencing, team chats, obviously, the IT services were overwhelmed. A lot of people moved to cloud. A lot of our customers moved to cloud in a rush because they had nothing to give to their employees to take home, and their home machines were supposed to come in and access their VPN or even emails, and then they had to give some devices to people through FedEx or some other mode of transportation so that they can actually securely access these things. But digital transformation has been around for a long time, but COVID is accelerating and has accelerated quite a bit. With that, a lot of our speakers also mentioned about data breaches. Most of these data breaches happen by credential stealing. A lot of these are motivated financially. Average cost of data breach keeps on increasing depending upon the vertical you are in. Every 40 seconds, you will see another attack happen. As soon as COVID hit us in March timeframe, high-profile accounts on Twitter were hacked into. Barack Obama's account was hacked into. Other politicians' accounts were hacked into, and messages were sent for charity purposes, funding purposes, etc. A lot of these accounts are being hacked into for financial benefits, but also when any hack happens like this, there is a reputational damage that is done. And when reputational damage is done, like Capital One account happened, Zoom, although Zoom keeps on growing, about 500,000 accounts became available on Darknet just for free. And if you wanted to get some other accounts for a price, they were available too. If your company or any other company that you know of doesn't appear here, doesn't mean that they have not been hacked into. It's just that these are some high-profile companies which were very recently hacked into. A lot of people use duplicate passwords. Phishing attacks, someone mentioned earlier, is targeting credentials, even though there are email warnings in place saying, hey, this is an external email. 6 out of 10 people will click on that and happily give their credentials away. Emails coming in like saying, hey, you know what, your payment is due, can you please pay? They even not only give their credentials, they also end up giving their financial information like credit cards or something else. In 2020, one of the key mandate due to COVID-19 is remote working. And how do you do business continuity? Because if all the companies and organizations were geared towards maybe 30% of their employees working from home. But when COVID hit us, 100% of employees were sent home. How do you make this business continuity and this transition happen without any impact like productivity or engagement, or making sure that your security is not compromised? If you ask any knowledge worker today, 2 out of them will say, you know what, Office will be obsolete by 2030. And that is very obvious when you talk to, when you listen to news about companies like Microsoft, Facebook. They have told their employees to work indefinitely from home. When people work from home, people work from any devices, what happens is the threat attack surface increases. These are the vulnerabilities that an unauthorized user can possibly use to access and steal data. Why does that threat attack surface suddenly increased? You're not coming in from the same device. You're not coming in from the same location. Your concept as an enterprise of perimeter has completely changed. It simply exploded. Suddenly, your perimeter is no longer your office buildings. Your perimeter is no longer your devices. Your perimeter is no longer specific strong rooms, etc. Your perimeter is no longer the applications on-prem. It has simply opened up to cloud. If you're not in cloud, you will soon be moving to cloud. If you are currently in hybrid mode, you will eventually move to cloud. And if you're starting up your business right now, you're definitely going to cloud. When you are in this environment, which is hybrid, which is in a flux, or you are in the cutting edge of the technology, or you're still on-prem, the device, the assets that you want to protect is your identity. And when I say identity, it doesn't just mean username and password. If you have an identity in place, which is just based on username and password, the bad news is that that identity has already been stolen. It's just a matter of time that you will know about it if you don't already know about it. Identity needs to move beyond username, passwords. It has to include your credentials, which could be user-based, user PKI certificates, could be FIDO keys, could be your behavior, your behavioral biometrics, context of where you're accessing, what you're accessing, why you're accessing those things. Devices where you are coming in from. You can't just come in from your office issued devices. You could be coming in from your personal devices, which are being shared by other people. Applications that you access on-prem or in the cloud. Data. After all, everything that you do is to protect the data that you're trying to access. Now, this data at rest, in transit, must be encrypted. This is what you want to do. Beyond that, you must protect your infrastructure. And infrastructure does not just include your servers. It may include your intranet websites. That's part of your infrastructure. And then how do you protect your network also? If you have certain assets on-prem and you have network capabilities there or network assets there, you must create micro perimeters so that if hackers got into one side of things, they don't just proliferate right through your network. You're able to stop them at various places. It's extremely important, folks, because if you're not looking at protecting all these assets, you're not looking at zero trust framework, which is extremely, extremely important. Key things in zero trust framework is always verify. Always verify access to your apps, your network, your infrastructures, your data. We talk to our customers and we say, you're protecting your data. Have you encrypted? Yes, 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 we have encrypted the data. Well, have you classified your data as confidential versus secret versus super secret versus public information? And then suddenly when you start talking to them, you realize that they will say, we are on a journey and we are on very initial, early stages of journey. So if you are in that stage of journey, don't worry about it because majority of the people are. Even three-letter acronym companies well known for security are in that stage. You must protect your websites, your platform. Privileged access management should be a good component of your stuff. Network protection, your access control must be risk-based adaptive authentication for your SaaS and on-prem applications. And all that, even before you do all that stuff, you must make sure that your identity is very well defined using user behavior, behavioral biometrics, velocity, geographical location, and your devices, not only device fingerprint, not static things like, hey, what's your browser version, what's your operating system, things like that. All that stuff done, dusted, many times over. You need to get into the next generation, device reputation, dynamic side of things, which actually tell you information about device saying this device has been involved in active fraud, debit or credit fraud. It's coming from behind a Tor browser. It's coming from behind a proxy, bad IP addresses, which keep on getting updated. Access velocity, saying, hey, this device, not user, but this device has been accessing your assets 500 times in the past 5 minutes. something suspicious over there. At Entrust, we provide these capabilities where you can combine identity with devices, feed it into a self-learning engine with predictive authentication and access to give you risk-based authentication, adaptive, access control to all these elements in a very zero trust framework manner. It's extremely important, folks. Zero trust framework is a framework, but when you're talking to your vendors of security, of choice, for identity, access management, do talk to them about how do you implement zero trust framework? Why is your framework, zero trust framework, important or differentiated from other people? And if you're talking to them, you must also talk to them about continuous authentication. You can't just expect your users, whether they're your customers, your employees, to log in and do nothing. You authenticate them at login, you manage their identity at login, your security at login, but also while they're working through. So if your employees are working through Office 365, monitor their behavior, not in a way that you are inspecting them or you're monitoring them working, but actually protecting your assets, saying, hey, Rajan comes in 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. He accesses his emails, works on Salesforce, SharePoint, Office 365, etc. But one day somebody tries to access Salesforce reports, downloads, and then starts uploading them onto Box. Is that normal behavior? No, it falls outside of normal behavior. What do you do in that case? Block access, maybe challenge him. Is he the person? Now, insider attack is another aspect of this situation. So you must monitor those kinds of behaviors. Ask your identity and access management vendor, how do you tie into user and entity behavior analytics? Not just saying, hey, you know what, I have identity and access management, which is zero trust framework. Yes. How do you do continuous authentication? Do you have capabilities to do that? Because those are extremely critical components in this post-COVID world where you have to adopt zero-factor authentication. And what becomes at the core of all this is identity. And your identity, as I mentioned, is not just username and password. It has to be a credential-based, high assurance, trustable identity, which is non-repudiable in case of high-value transactions. There are various levels of authentication. There are various levels of identity assurance also. Depending upon the use case, you should have that thing. We talk about FIDO, we talk about credential-based identity. There's one key difference between credential-based identity and FIDO. FIDO is extremely, extremely popular in consumer. That's where it started. Now it's making its way to enterprise side of things. Fortunately, or unfortunately, FIDO is a proof of possession, which means if I took that FIDO key and walked around, I become you. If you took that key, you became that identity. There is nothing live to validate if that FIDO identity that was issued by XYZ company is actually still valid. If you compare it to credentials, which are PKI-based credentials, there is a CA, there is a chain of trust, which is established, and you can at any point in time say, is this identity still valid? Is this identity issued by you in a chain of trust? And can I trust the CA? Can I trust the root CA, which was there? So that's where non-repudiation comes from. So that, folks, is very, very important to understand that identity is at the core of all that thing, whether it's user identity, device identity, or anything else. You must eliminate passwords. We have a passwordless solution, which you can use mobile devices with. You can use FIDO keys with if you wanted to, but it's of a lower assurance, as I've just mentioned. For high assurance identity, you must have our mobile application, which embeds in a very secure way the user identity, user credentials, the certificate issued to the user by your company through a CA. You connect with your computer, doesn't matter if it's Windows, it's Mac, it's 8, Windows 8, Windows 10, Windows Hello, doesn't matter for us. We encrypt that Bluetooth connection on top of it because it's extremely important. Bluetooth is not as secure as not to be able to fight the man-in-the-middle attack, but we put a layer of security on top of that Bluetooth connection, which makes it secure, no man in the middle attack. And once you log in using your facial biometrics, Touch ID, etc., you can not only log into your computer automatically without having to authenticate again, but still maintaining the high level of security, remote desktop, any cloud application, PKI, secure shell, any application that you can use smart card with, you can use mobile smart credentials from Entrust with. This is the passwordless experience that you need to go through and actually experience. Let's quickly take a look at a video. The user walks up to the computer. The computer gets connected over a secure, encrypted Bluetooth connection without man in the middle fears. You say, yes, I want to connect to that computer. I want to log in. Touch ID, facial recognition, whatever your administrator has enabled for you, or a PIN in that sake. You log into your computer. Not only you log into your computer without having to type in your username, password, you also can then access any application, for example, Office 365. Once you log into Office 365, you don't have to again, as long as your device was in proximity with your computer, you can continue working. This is the frictionless, smooth, hands-free, touch-free working. You never have to log in again. Don't remember a username, don't remember a password. As you walk away from your computer, Bluetooth proximity breaks. You can either be logged out or your screen can get locked. This is the beautiful experience that you want. Not only you're logging in with your high assurance credential, you can use the same credential for email signing and encryption. Dissuade the phishing attack that we talked about. Encrypt your files. Sign the documents. At the end of the day, what you want is zero trust framework with high assurance credentials. Extremely, extremely differentiating, because now you're looking at comprehensive security solution. You're not talking about identity and access management. You're not talking about saying, hey, how do I log in? How do I protect my logins? You're going beyond that. That's where you need to go, because you're protecting your data, remember? You're protecting your devices. You're protecting your applications. You're protecting your identities. Extremely important. Simple example of how do you sign into for digital document signing. Send a document signing request. Say, yes, I want to sign this. You send it to Entrust. We do the authorization request, release the keys from the secure element, sign the document, send it back. Suddenly you expanded your use case. We have a leasing company in Europe, financial leasing company. They're using this solution currently. Similarly, with HSM, if you wanted to introduce, Entrust has a large variety of products. One of them is Cyber HSM. You do the remote signing the same way. So instead of releasing the keys from your mobile application, you actually get it from your HSM. You sign the document, send it back to the application. Suddenly you've expanded the use case. Same thing with email signing and encryption. If you want to enable email signing and encryption, it's very easy. You carry a mobile device, you can easily sign through your Outlook application. Once again, protect your data, protect your applications, protect the devices you're coming in from, protect your identity. Your identity in this case is on your mobile device. It can be verified at any given point in time with your private or public CA. It is stored in the secure element. It is hardware protected and unlocked by your facial recognition. If you cannot use the device native facial recognition, we will provide you with a soft facial recognition method to do that, or Touch ID, or a PIN. As we talk about this and we say everything is about identity, you must be able to, in this world, remotely onboard your customers, remotely verify the identity of your customers using identities issued by government, for example, driver's license, passports, health cards, visas. You can streamline this entire process. But before that, we have built-in device reputation, which will validate that the device you're coming in from is of good quality. It's not jailbroken, it's not rooted, does not come from a hacker network, is not coming from behind a Tor browser, has passed the access velocity and fraud checks. Once you have done that, then you can ask the user to scan the document. Once they scan the document, we run 50+ different forensic tests to authenticate the document. Ask them to take a picture or selfie. And while they are doing the selfie, we run liveness detection test, very enhanced liveness detection test. And once that is done, compare, contrast, make sure all the information at front of the document is delivered back to you so that you can onboard that employee or consumer. You can use that for KYC. You can use that for onboarding an employee, a customer. You can use it for account opening, fraudulent ID detection, any card transaction if you want to do that also. Better be a very high value thing. Any loan applications, any new products that you're selling to your customers, you can use this technology there as well. What is extremely important, folks, is that whatever vendor you choose, it must fit into your existing infrastructure. Because we've talked about hybrid, other speakers have talked about your hybrid mode in which you're going to be. If you have anything on-prem, do you have existing infrastructures like Entrust PKI or Microsoft CA or Red Hat CA? Do you have HSMs in play, cloud or on-prem? Do you have Active Directory? Do you have Azure Directory? Do you have applications which are in cloud or on-prem? Do you have Windows devices or Android devices, Chromebooks, Mac devices? You must be able to protect all those things. You must be able to leverage that thing. So at Entrust, we provide you with a cloud option, with on-prem option, in your virtual private data center option, whichever way you want to deploy. We will fit into your infrastructure, but it is very important, whichever vendor you choose, whosoever you work with, must comply with Zero Trust framework, must fit into your infrastructure as is without you having to modify. IT skills are at premium right now. Your IT personnel are overwhelmed with requests coming in. So make sure you're using passwordless experience. If you cannot use passwordless experience, make sure the solutions have password reset, self-service capabilities. I strongly, strongly recommend and urge you to take a look at high assurance, passwordless credential solutions from Entrust. Let's take a look at some of our customers who have used our solutions. Consumer Bank in Latin America. They started with 6 million consumers. They were on a legacy product, and then we moved them into cloud. And the transition from on-prem to cloud was smooth. They started using transaction attribute risk-based authentication. They started using passwordless, FIDO tokens, etc. Another organization, a financial organization at workplace, is using our passwordless experience, which is integrated with Microsoft CA. A national ID solution for issuing credential-based physical and digital IDs. A healthcare facility in Europe is using our solution for touchless ID. Basically, the healthcare workers walk up to their computers. Computer says, hey, put in your PIN. They put in the PIN. All their phones, mobile devices are on a patch or in their pockets. They never have to take physical smart cards out or their phones out. They just put in a PIN and continue working. They use it for not only for logging into the computers, but they access their healthcare records, as well as signing prescriptions. Whether you're a citizen, you're using it for citizen identity, open banking, traveling, mobile driver's license, passports, etc., we can help you with that, as well as your employees. At the end of the day, you want comprehensive security, passwordless access, perimeterless security. You need deployment flexibilities, bring your own device security, and integrate with your existing infrastructure. We have a unified platform. Wherever you want to deploy, please contact us. And thank you very much for patiently listening.
Thank you very much, Rajan. That was really, really good, really interesting. Thank you for this final presentation. Rajan, please don't go away. I just want to take the opportunity, since we just saw your presentations, to ask you 2 questions. We're going to move to the QA panel right now. So please, anybody who wants to add on, because we're talking about the same identity access management space, I will have questions from for every single vendor. But if you want to comment, if you want to add up on some of the questions I'm asking, please feel free. Feel free to jump on. Rajan, one question that I wanted to ask you, listening to your conversations, you mentioned indeed in this COVID environment, the growing amount of everybody working from home and connecting with their own device, not only corporate device. I guess one of the challenge, how do you ensure, you know, the challenge, the conflict between security and applying security to a personal device and data privacy concerns, and to make sure that on the same device, personal data are not accessed, processed by even your employer where it's not allowed?
So there are, good question, Anthony. So when you have your personal devices, bring your own device is very, very common. There are solutions out there where, for example, we have implemented and deployed a solution with an MDM vendor who can actually differentiate between the workspace and applications that the work has control over and where my personal data is. So definitely that is one way to differentiate. This is your personal applications. They're not going to look into or delete your banking applications or snoop into what data is being transferred, etc. So you have your own kind of workspace area. That's one aspect of it. Another aspect is from perspective of you as an employee, or sorry, you as an employer want to make sure that any device that is coming in has not been infected with malware, has not been used into other attack mechanisms, etc. So there are technologies out there like device reputation, which we provide, and you can actually deploy it, whether it's a mobile device as part of an SDK embedded within the applications, or if you're accessing browser-based applications, then there is SDKs embedded there, which can provide certain fingerprint of the device to our backend, which is collecting data of about 6 billion devices worldwide to tell you what's the reputation of the device. Very simple test can be run on the device itself, saying whether it's jailbroken, rooted, etc. But then there's a larger network of signals from those devices, which we gather worldwide and say, and it's not about the user specifically, but about the device, whether that device is engaged in certain nefarious activities.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. I will switch back. So if anybody wants to comment on the questions, again, feel free. From other vendors, I want to switch back, so we'll go around in different questions, but to the privilege access management space with Cyber Expo, and questions for you, Marcus. On the privilege access management, so your presentation was great, and not only on the solutions, but also the methodology, the approach to bringing a PAM solution. I guess one of the questions we hear very often is, you go to systems, take Active Directory. Everybody has Active Directory, whether it's on-prem or the like of an Azure AD. You've got hundreds, thousands of accounts. How do you differentiate a privileged account to a normal account? And some are obvious if you are a domain administrator, fair enough, but there are probably a lot of different accounts in the middle. How do you solve that? What's the recommendations that you would have for that?
Okay, it's a good question. And usually when you go to the Active Directory, you have a lot of accounts, and you can classify based on the number of privileges it has. So it's very common to understand what kind of privilege, if this credential has a privilege to address any configuration in the hardware and in the desktop, it will be considered as a privileged account. If its credential has a privilege to create users, so depends on the pulse of that's up that credential, we will target it as a privileged credential, and then we create and identify it to create a way to change this password, change this credential very fast, so it never, in order to not be spotted. So based on the number of privilege it has, we can identify if the privileged credential or not. And we had talked to customers at the beginning of the process to identify which rules we can set up together to correctly identify it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for clarifying this. Another point I wanted to ask you, and you mentioned that briefly in the presentation, which is so true, we see it every single time, is the pushback you get when you want to deploy a PAM solution from, well, yeah, the traditional IT administrator who for the last 10 years had 24/7 access to the systems and privileged access. And then you're telling him, well, tomorrow you can't do that anymore. You will have to use the PAM solutions to make sure that we know what you're doing, and if there is problems that we can actually assess what happened. What we see very often is the pushback where those community of users sometimes will say, oh my God, I won't be able to work anymore. This is the end. No, I can't. And then you get pushback from the operations. I guess you've seen that more than once. What's your recommendations with these kind of situations, and how do you approach it?
Yes, that's really interesting questions. We have learned a lot about that from when we start to deploy PAM. And that's really one of the main issues we have when you're deploying PAM. And I think the first important thing here is that we're seeing a shift in cybersecurity mindset. So with all these new regulations, one thing we should consider is that the administrative employees, they are being held as responsible for actions. So the first thing to understand that we are changing, we see a change in the regulation that's making the guys responsible for action. So when you start to talk about understanding the responsibility for each actions, we see there's a change in the mindset, right? That's the first point. So they are becoming aware of the responsibility to have an access. That's the first point. The second point is that if you bring your team from the beginning, understand and share the business drivers, the business motivations to that deployment, it becomes much easier to they understand why you were doing that. So it's much, we believe that when you start from the beginning, sharing the proposal, the intention behind this project, make much easier to do that. And the third point I would like to consider that is I have mentioned in my presentation that it's very important at the beginning, you understand where you're going to have a friction. Because you see a lot of administrators today, they believe that this change, mindset changing, they believe it's going to be good for the company, for they, and it's make their life much safer, let's say like that. So when you identify the correct friction points or the persons that have this kind of restriction, you can have clear talks about that, and makes much easier for the deployment process. So we have seen less than 10 to 15% of the user with restriction resist to a good talk, to a clear objectives doing that. So at the end of the process, if you have with this 10 to 15% of users that really keep pushing back, you need to use a stronger push with the corporate definition. But almost all the time, we see that the administrators are understanding the relevance of doing that and cooperating with the process.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very useful. Thank you. I'll move questions before we enlarge to for everybody general questions. Questions for Binod at Islanders. Thank you, Marcus. Binod, on your presentations, I wanted to ask you, is there common triggers or common context that you recognize for organizations to unify identity access management under the same fabric as you were mentioning during your presentations? Is there something that says, oh yes, for us that clicks, that makes complete sense, or is it really specific from one customer to another? Oh, you're on mute, Peanut. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
So that's an interesting question. And for getting an answer to that, we need to really look at what are the common client markets in question. You have large enterprise customers, typically global organizations, more than 25, 30,000 users minimum, working in all continents, quite a complex scenario. Whether we like it or not, they have already invested in some sort of technology, and they're like Titanic ships, which will find very difficult to turn around, even though they have realized that what they have got perhaps is not serving their purpose so well. In contrast, if you look at the mid-market, typically customers with up to about 10,000 users, there's no hard and fast rule, but about 80% of the customers we find in that band. And revenue, according to Gartner, about $3.5 billion a year. Those are the customers which typically classify for the mid-market, and a good number of them have not yet implemented identity and access management. Some of them have gone and done something with cloud-based access management, but IGA is something that either they have not implemented, or many of them we find have bought something, either remained on the shelf, or really partly got implemented because they got disillusioned with the costs and the effort that is really required to put it all together. Those are ideal situations for the comprehensive compact identity kind of a technology, because look at a bank, for example. We're working with very large number of mid-sized banks, and because of the regulations, because of the nature of business they're in, some of them would like to begin with something like access certification. Simple, but very, very important thing to many organizations. Some would like to begin somewhere in the access management side, looking at just the AD-based integrations, applications or something of that sort. And some would like to begin with provisioning of the most key applications. So they could be coming in from different directions, but one common denominator is that they do not want complexity of, they have been watching from the sidelines the complexity of identity and access management. They're not wanting to invest that kind of money, nor wait for that long to implement these technologies. And they would like services to be on the fly rather than long-range implementations. So those are ideal customers, typically from the mid-market, who have implemented maybe access management. Many of them have changed to our technology because in access management, they felt that they're serving only one small purpose, and that also could be far more expensive. So these mid-market customers are not only looking for comprehensive solutions, but also for low-cost economics and quick implementability, and something that could be coming closer to identity fabric concept that I talked about. That's the right kind of customers.
Thank you, Binod. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And then one questions for Matt at ForgeRock. So something I wanted to pick on. You said in your presentation, Matt, you talk about complete IAM platforms. I know that you've released recently also in the governance space with ForgeRock governance platform. So what I wanted to ask is how ForgeRock is expanding its wings in this area as well, and what's the objective with this jump into the governance space from ForgeRock?
Yeah, so I really appreciate that, and yeah, it's very true that ForgeRock has been known as a CIAM identity and access management provider. We've had a lot of leadership recognition from different analysts in that space, but over the past 2 years, we've looked at the entire market and the entire range of what you need to provide as identity and access management. And you're correct, we started moving into the governance space about 1.5 years ago with the first part of that was an access request solution to prevent unauthorized access. And then we moved to an access certification solution to be able to remediate and detect unauthorized access. And where you see us going now, and we just released our first product here, is really leveraging artificial intelligence to drive the identity governance process, to automate it, to make it more secure, and to make it not as cumbersome as it has been in the past. As Benoit's pointed out, you know, a lot of customers have gotten started down the governance path and have got disillusioned at how big and complex of a problem it is, how many accounts are overprivileged or have too many access entitlements, and how do you get your arms around that? So we have another strategy here at ForgeRock, which is really leveraging our artificial intelligence. And as being a provider that provides access management as well as identity governance, we're going to leverage that artificial intelligence to be able to see both sides. And if you think of it like a brain, you have the left side of the brain, which is very analytical, and the right side of the brain, which is very creative. And so on the left side of the brain, we're going to drive your identity governance solution through AI. And what we're going to do is we're going to leverage a lot of different sets of information. So application logs, Active Directory, an identity governance solution, our own single sign-on solution, to see what the real-time access is across your organization, right? So, you know, roles are going to change. Peer groups can be very biased because as soon as one person gets access in a group, that lowers the risk for the next person, So we want to eliminate all that with our artificial intelligence and be able to automate access approvals, access denials, send only the ones that are in the middle for employee review, and do the same thing with access certifications. Then on the other side of that, since we have that information of who should have access to what, we want to be very good at providing really good identity hygiene and only giving people access to the things they need. On the access side of that, then what we want to do is we want to make sure, okay, so Matt's allowed to have access to this entitlement right now, overall, but is he allowed to have it right now? And, you know, Rajan talked about zero trust and how, you know, once you authenticate somebody, the basic principle of once you authenticate somebody, you have the most trust that that's them at that given moment. But we want to leverage the other side of artificial intelligence to say, is that still Matt there? So, you know, I've logged in, and Rajan gave the example. I log in, you know, he checks his email, he goes to Salesforce, he does this, he does that. Well, as you build that confidence level, I can actually have more confidence that somebody's the person who logged in an hour later by using artificial intelligence to look at that behavioral analytics. And this is where we feel at ForgeRock, where you say, where are we going down the line, is we want to be that unified provider leveraging artificial intelligence to be able to look at, should you have access to something, yes or no, and should you have access to that at that given moment, to provide that total 360-degree view experience of a customer. So that's where we're headed, definitely progressing down the identity governance side and using AI to be the driver in that, using AI to be the decision maker, the policy maker, and to set those different risk levels of who should have access to what and different entitlements.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Very good. Thank you. What I'll do now, because we have literally a few minutes left, so let's open up to everybody who wants to pick up on the questions, and feel free. So it's really questions for anybody, any speakers, as you see fit. So the first questions I wanted to ask all of you, we see the emergence of CIAM. So CIAM as consumer or customer identity and access management, which is switching from the traditional identity access management or governance as a security space. And I wanted to get your opinion on how fast are we switching and growing the ability to add business value and justify the return on investment, rather than the typical security projects, which is very difficult to tie to the core business of a bank or financial services, for example. Do you see that? Obviously, you all mentioned COVID and how this has fast-tracked digital transformations, but do you see that following up on the same trend as fast as we've seen over the last couple of months?
So I'll jump in on that one. So I think what we're seeing, and COVID's accelerated it. It was already going to happen, but I think the time horizon has gotten a lot shorter. When you look at e-commerce, people want to have a personalized experience. They're more likely to shop at organizations that give them recommendations. So they want this personalized experience. They want organizations to know who they are. They want that small mom and pop business type of experience, but they want it online. Now, with that, they also want security, or actually, it's not that they want security. Security is actually expected. So they expect that their account's going to be secure. You're going to protect their data. You're going to do all these things. So when we look at it at ForgeRock, it's all about how do you provide organizations the ability to provide their customers the best experience. And we do that through our contextualized journeys, where we're able to adapt what we're doing based on the different context. You know, Rajan talked about context. Everybody here has talked about how context interacts. So I do believe that organizations that are able to provide the best security experience, the best self-service identity onboarding experience, and then be able to gather that critical information through progressive profiling of a person and provide recommendations, are really have a chance to supersede some of the big businesses that you know from on-prem. So with this rapid shift, if you're able to provide the best digital experience, you can start taking business away from some of your competitors that might have had a better brick and mortar experience. So I think really SIAM is going to be really critical now and over the next couple of years, as e-commerce is going to have a big boost from the lockdowns that we've had.
Thank you, Matt.
So Anthony, one more thing. Thanks, Matt. That was excellent. Well put there. SIAM is going through a tremendous shift also, because the focus has moved on to online, more and more e-commerce, more and more frauds, PSD2 compliances in Europe coming through. You will see 3DS kind of transaction verification, strong consumer authentication. All these things were happening before COVID was there also, but just the acceleration of that thing has put things in a different perspective. Remote onboarding of customers and consumers for whether the banks, etc. That's where we are seeing a huge shift and uptick. People want to get different signals. Fraud detection and prevention is becoming key and center also. So people are not just looking for an identity store; they're looking for advanced signals, deeper AI, machine learning algorithms to provide them with the overall view of how a customer is interacting with the systems, even behavioral biometrics, the way you type, the way you switch between applications. So that's where things are headed, I think.
And Anthony, when we talk about CM in the mid-market, it is even more. We are seeing a lot more interest for CM and the importance of it than even large organizations. But if you look at Gartner's documents, they very clearly talk in terms of the must features in CM and the optional features. And what everybody is trying to do in the marketplace is to build a huge CM, like we built a huge IGA at some point in time. From our point of view, what we see talking to large number of mid-market customers is that many of them, almost 40% of them would like to have CM features from inside the same product, but the basics. They don't want to complicate life too much. A complex product with too many features and things is also more difficult to implement and is confusing. And of course, it costs more. So while we look at the immediate implications and importance of implementing CM in the mid-market, it's also important to see what is it that market needs and how quickly that can be deployed and how it can work in an interconnected fashion with the rest of the identity and access management. That's extremely important. And we are going to have our CM early next year, which is also going to be a part of compact identity, like we have everything for the workforce.
I was muted, sorry. So thank you, Binod, very much appreciated and great answer. We are running to the end. So just as a conclusion, I think we do see across the IAM space, we had a very great set of presentations today. We do see from the cloud, the emergence of all the different digital transformations aligned with regulations growing in GDPR, especially with, for example, at the moment, the UK leaving the EU. So vendors, all of you with the SaaS solutions coming up, take into account this kind of challenges, having to provide the data, host the data, process the data, ensure the data is controlled in the right way to comply with this data privacy as well. So it was great to have you all around, and thank you very much. If anybody has further questions, you can reach out to us. We will make sure we facilitate the conversations or reach out to those vendors directly. Thank you very much. I hope you really enjoyed those conversations. I'm sure we could have continued for a lot of hours, but we need to leave the space to the next conference. So I will liberate the room. And again, have a great day, and thank you for this contribution. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
you.